So let's start to uncover Essex as we do at this time every Saturday morning. Your memories are more than welcome on 0800 111 40 41. Do share in our conversation. Today in particular, we're looking at those factory villages that grew up around two of our very famous Essex factories. Bata, from a few years back, shoe manufacturers, and Scruton windows in Silver End, just close to Whittam. Both of those factories built housing estates to support their workers, and not just houses. In fact, a whole host of amenities were built up too. Let's talk first, Ian, about Bata Town at East Tilbury. And joining us to do that first off is Mike Tarbard, who's chair of the Bata Heritage Society. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, guys. How are you? Happy New Year to you.
And to you too. Yeah, we're very well, thank you. Mike, this is a pretty special place, and certainly was when it was at its height, wasn't it?
Certainly was. Can I first of all say thank you for inviting me on the show? Much appreciated.
You're welcome. So
yes, it was a very special place. Certainly, as a child, I can remember growing up there, and some of the things you said in your intros are so true. It was a very, very safe place to live, much different to today's society. Back doors were always open. People would always be popping into each other. The kids, we'd all play out on the streets. There weren't, of course, the cars that there are today. Certainly in our records, we've got photographs of the estate, as you mentioned, guys, with virtually no cars parked on it. Now, if you were to drive along the estate, there's cars parked possibly on both sides of the road. So, very, very different scenario to what it is today.
And just paint a picture, not only of the houses, Mike, that are still in existence, but what about the buildings? What about the factory? I mean, how much of the original site is still remaining?
Well, I would say virtually 100%. It's obviously no longer a shoemaking factory. It was Bata sold out in, I think it was 2005 or thereabouts. And the company or the organisation that took it over fundamentally are a storage facility. So, people like, I guess, accountants, lawyers, local authorities who want to get paperwork off-site but still need to call it back from time to time, use these storage facilities. But it's also an industrial estate, so there's lots of small businesses that go on there. So yes, the buildings are still there. And going back to what you were saying, I have a suspicion that the windows in the factories might well have been Crittles. Some of my colleagues would be able to say, yes, he's right, or he's talking rubbish as usual. But there were very simple structures. They were built in, Bata's bought the land in 1932, started building the factories in 33, 34-ish, shall we say. So here we are in 2022. So they're sort of 66, 88 years old.
Crikey.
And they're still there. The company site have refurbished them. They painted them. They're using them, as I say, for storage facilities, small offices and businesses. So yes, it is a very busy environment there, but a very different environment.
Do we know why Mr. Bata came to Essex? Why did he choose this part of the world to open his factory?
Well, the interesting thing is he as you mentioned, Thomas Bata was Czech. He had a shoemaking business from 1894, from memory. And he wanted to actually break into the British Empire in the 30s because, of course, in those days it was vast. But he had problems, we understand, with the Northampton shoemakers in particular, who thought he was going to import cheap shoes. So he decided that if he built a factory where he could make the shoes in the country, there wouldn't be a problem. So he advertised for land, and we're not honestly sure where or how he advertised. Probably it must be local press somewhere. And at East Tilbury, there was nothing there apart from farmland, and it was owned by a farmer called Wilson. And within a short time of seeing the advert, Wilson contacted the Bata people in Czechoslovakia, in Zlin, and so the people came over from Zlin to meet him, and within a very short space of time, in January 1932, they'd agreed, if you like, heads of agreement, as we call it today. They'd exchanged contracts at the end of January 1932, and the completion took place in March 1932. So the idea was he would build this factory and he would overcome the problems of the Northampton shoemakers. Unfortunately, Thomas Bata, though, was killed shortly after this in July 1932. It was a bit like the Glenn Miller story, for those listeners who remember Glenn Miller. Thomas Bata was going off in the Bata airplane from Czechoslovakia to Milan in Switzerland to open a factory. It was very foggy. They were advised not to fly, but he said, I had to. They took off. Unfortunately, the plane crashed and the pilot and Thomas Bata were killed.
Very sad story. I didn't know that. Very sad story. How did the housing estate and the amenities grow up though around the factory? Whose idea was that? Was that still the Bata family's idea to do that?
Yeah, it must have been. I know I'm old, but not quite that old. But yeah, they did. And the first row of houses in Bata Avenue were built in 1934, and they were very much based on the housing in Zlin, which East Tilbury was based on. The type of factory building, the type of housing, flat roofed. And again, I understand that a lot of the materials in the early days were brought over from Czechoslovakia. So, wiring, and I believe even windows, things like that. Because, of course, we're talking about, it was Depression years here in Britain.
Yeah.
So maybe these materials weren't readily available.
It's great, though, that some of those amenities, not only the housing, but some of the amenities have remained, haven't they, in the town?
That's right. You touched on what was there. Going through it very, very quickly, they built a cinema. They built an outdoor swimming pool. There was tennis courts. They built a sports field, which was second to none. It was a big sports field, took 3 or 4 football pitches. And back in the day, in the 50s and 60s, there used to be what was called the Essex Business Houses Football League, which was very good amateur football. And Bata's put in a number of teams into that. And coincidentally, but there was a connection with West Ham United, because as I understand it, the managing director at the time, John Tusher, the late John Tusher, I should say, became a director of West Ham, and he invited West Ham to come down each year and play a charity football match.
Brilliant.
So at the end of the season or the beginning of the season, pre-season, they would come down and they would play a charity football match against a Bata 11. They would then disappear after the game into what was the hotel, and there would be a meal for the West Ham players and management, the Bata players and invited guests. And in fact, I think it was in 1964 when West Ham got to the cup final, and I believe they played Preston North End. They actually came down to East Tilbury to train because the Bata pitch was the same size as Wembley. Bowling Road, where West Ham played, was quite a small pitch. And so they trained for a fortnight on the Bata pitch, and I think they beat Preston 2-1.
Brilliant. What a great memory. I wonder if anybody listening to the programme, Mike, was there, and saw them training on the pitch and can remember that. I mean, what a great memory that would be to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we did try to contact, or I did try to contact some of the former West Ham players that I thought had played, people like Harry Redknapp, the late Martin Peters, Jeff Hurst, and I thought Trevor Brooking, but Trevor Brooking did write back to me to say he never actually played at East Tilbury. Unfortunately, I didn't hear from the others. Maybe my letters didn't get through, but I can remember seeing all these players, certainly the likes of Bobby Moore, Martin Peters, Jeff Hurst, playing down at East Tilbury. It was incredible. And of course, the only year that West Ham didn't play was 1966, the year that England won the World Cup.
Yes.
8 players were off playing for England.
And Mike, for you, I mean, your love of the area. Just tell us your sort of personal connection to Bata and that part of the world.
Well, I was born up in the Midlands, and my father was a fairly local lad. He lived in Leindon, and he got a job working at Bata. And then post-war, he came back to Bata, and he wanted a house, so he applied for a house, which is something, picking up what you were saying earlier, chaps, about the housing. You had to apply for a house, and he applied for a house because I was born, I was 6 months old, when my mum and I moved down from Nottingham to East Tilbury. So I grew up on the Bata estate in 2 different houses with my parents till I got married in 1972. So I was there sort of 25 years, roughly. And it was just, as I said earlier, it was a wonderful thing. And I joined the Bata Heritage Centre, when was it, 2012 or maybe slightly earlier, 2011. And one of the nice things I found about it was that most of the people who were involved in that group were people who I'd grown up with on the Bata estate, but I'd lost touch with for many years.
Oh, lovely.
So here we are now. We're all known each other virtually all our lives and working together, to try and keep the name Bata going.
Well, let's hope people listening to the programme today, like you, Mike, have fond memories of East Tilbury, of Bata Town. I'm going to call it Bata Town because that's what we all used to call it years ago. It was called Bata Town, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Can I mention one of the things? I'll get shot by my committee if I don't mention this. We do have what we call open days twice a year, and because of COVID, it's been difficult to put these on. But we do have an open day on the 23rd of April, which is a Saturday, partly in the East Tilbury Library, where the centre is based, and partly in one of the old factory buildings. If people are interested in going, it's from 10 o'clock in the morning on the Saturday, the 23rd of April, till 4 p.m. Just put in Bata Heritage Centre into Google. You'll pick up our website, and details will be on there about it. My contact details are on there, either my address, telephone number, or an email address. So any listener can actually have a look at that and contact us if they're interested. We give walks around the estate and tell people what it was like back in the day, show them pictures of what it was like back in the day, and most people find it very, very interesting.
Let's see if we can find somebody who's still living in Bata Town, East Tilbury. Maybe you're living there now and hadn't quite realised how much importance your little place in Essex has in our county's history. If that's you and you live in East Tilbury, in Bata Town as we're calling it, we'd love to hear from you. 0800 111 40 41. And Mike, thank you so much for your time on the programme today. It's been great catching up. And long live Bata Town, I say.
That's great. If anybody wants to contact us, go to the website and contact me through that.
We will. We shall look out for you, Mike. And that date in April, the 23rd, how great to be able to even have a look at the building. So much when we're talking about uncovering Essex, Steve, isn't there any more to see? And on this occasion, there is.
It is. Most of it is still there. Most of the amenities are still there in one form or another.
Margaret on the text says Bata still have shoe shops in South Africa. So the name does live on, doesn't it? 0800 111 40 41 if you're calling BBC Essex today. If you do want to WhatsApp us, it's 08000 321 333. Start your message with the word Essex.
And I wonder if anybody listening still has a pair of Bata shoes. Come on. Have a go. Look through the wardrobe. See if you've got some old Bata shoes in there.